Welcome to our tutorial on React error boundaries. Today we'll dive into what they are, why you might need them, and how to implement and benefit from using them in your React projects. First up, let's introduce the concept of error boundaries. Then we'll understand the problem they address, such as how components can crash silently or cause the whole app to break. Next, we'll explore why error boundaries are a solution, how they catch errors in rendered children and prevent them from crashing your entire application. After that, I'll walk you through the implementation steps, showing you how easy it is to add an error boundary to your codebase. We'll also discuss some best practices for using error boundaries effectively. Finally, we'll wrap up with a conclusion on why they are such valuable tools in modern React development. So, let's get started. Welcome to our tutorial on React error boundaries. In React, components can sometimes throw errors during rendering. When that happens, you might see an error message or even a full app crash, which isn't ideal for user experience. That's where error boundaries come in. They catch these errors and allow you to display a custom fallback UI instead of the default error message. This way, your application remains stable and can provide a better user experience by showing a friendly message or a loading state while the issue is resolved. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into understanding the problem of error handling in your React applications. You know how sometimes components can throw errors when they render? Well, if these errors aren't caught, they can cause your entire app to crash. Pretty frustrating, right? That's where error boundaries come in. Error boundaries are special components you can use to catch errors in child components and prevent them from crashing the whole application. For example, let's say you have a component that fetches data from an API. If something goes wrong during the fetch, your error boundary will catch it, display a fallback UI, and keep the rest of your app running smoothly. It's like having a safety net for your React components. So next time you encounter those pesky errors, remember to use error boundaries to keep your app running like a well-oiled machine. Hey there, fellow developers. Let's dive into why we use something called error boundaries in React. First off, they help us by preventing the whole app from crashing when an error occurs in a child component. Imagine you have a complex app with lots of moving parts. Without error boundaries, one small mistake could bring it all down. But with them, only the faulty part gets the red team treatment while everything else keeps running smoothly. Plus, they let us show users a friendly fallback UI, like a soothing message or even a simple loading spinner, instead of seeing scary error messages. This not only improves our app's reliability but also gives users a much smoother experience. And lastly, error boundaries help isolate errors to specific components, making debugging easier and less messy. So, next time you're building your React apps, remember the power of error boundaries. They keep things running smoothly for everyone involved. Rock it. Welcome back, everyone. In this slide, we're diving into the implementation steps for setting up error boundaries in your React application. First, let's create a class component that extends React. Component. Think of it as wrapping a part of your app where you suspect errors might occur. Next, override the static getDerivedStateFromError lifecycle method. This method is called whenever an error occurs within its scope, and it helps React figure out how to respond. Finally, use component.didCatch in this component to log any error details that come up. This not only helps you debug, but also prevents your entire app from crashing due to a single mistake. So, by following these steps, you can ensure smoother user experiences and more reliable applications. Welcome to our tutorial on creating a basic error boundary in React. An error boundary is a React component that catches JavaScript errors anywhere within its child component tree, without affecting the user experience. Let's dive into the code. First, we import React and component from React. Then we define a class called error boundary that extends the component class. Inside it, we set up our state with Hazor initially false. The static getDerivedStateFromError method updates this state when an error is caught. In component.didCatch, we log the error to the console. This can also be used for reporting errors to a service. Finally, in the render method, if there's an error, it shows a simple message. Otherwise, it passes through its children components. This setup ensures that any error within child components is caught and handled gracefully. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into the benefits and best practices of using React error boundaries. So what exactly are they? Well, error boundaries help catch runtime errors in your components and display a fallback UI instead of crashing the whole app. This means if something goes wrong with one part of your application, it won't bring down everything else. Pretty cool, right? For instance, imagine you have an API call that fails. Instead of seeing an ugly stack trace, users will see a polite message like, "Oops, something went wrong." That's the first benefit, containing errors to specific components. Plus, they make debugging easier because you can catch and log errors without stopping your application from running smoothly. And lastly, fallback UIs enhance user experience by providing clear and friendly messages when things don't go as planned. Alright, let's recap the key points about error boundaries in React. First off, they're designed to catch and handle errors during rendering, keeping them from crashing your entire app. Think of it like a safety net. When something goes wrong, an error boundary kicks in to contain that issue, so other parts of your application remain unaffected. For instance, if you have a component with some complex state or props handling, and suddenly there's a runtime error, the error boundary will catch that error, preventing the app from falling apart. Now, to actually implement this magic, you need to do two things. Use the lifecycle method to clean up after errors, like resetting state or removing problematic child components, and the method to log the error details. It's a powerful tool for keeping your app stable and user-friendly. Welcome to our tutorial on React error boundaries. Today, we'll dive into what they are and why you should use them. First up, introduction. Let's understand the basics of error boundaries in React. Next, we'll explore the problem they solve, ensuring that errors don't crash your entire app. Why use error boundaries? They help keep your UI stable and prevent users from seeing unhandled exceptions. Then, we'll walk through the steps to implement them in your projects. We'll also cover some benefits and best practices to ensure you make the most out of this feature. Finally, we'll wrap up with a quick conclusion. By the end, you'll be well equipped to handle errors gracefully in React applications. Let's get started.